The storm hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse office like an angry god demanding entry. Lightning split the Seoul skyline in jagged white fury, illuminating the silhouette of a man who controlled more lives than he could count, and tonight he was losing control. Kang Tae-joon stood with his back to the city, phone pressed against his ear, jaw clenched so tight it could crack diamonds. His custom Italian suit hung perfectly on his broad shoulders, but sweat beaded at his temples. The voice on the other end spoke rapid Russian, each word a knife twisting deeper. Ty думаешь, что можешь обмануть меня? The Russian growled through the line. You think you can deceive me? Tae-joon's knuckles whitened around the phone. He understood perhaps one word in 5. His translator, the only person he'd trusted with the intricate web of international negotiations that held his empire together, had been found 3 days ago in the Han River with a bullet through his skull. The Crimson Lotus Syndicate was Tae-joon's masterpiece. Built from nothing after he'd clawed his way out of an orphanage and the brutal streets of Busan, it now stretched across 5 countries. Smuggling routes that moved everything from conflict diamonds to cutting-edge semiconductor chips. Underground casinos where billionaires gambled away fortunes. Tech black markets that governments pretended not to see. International alliances so delicate they required perfect communication, and he just lost his voice. The Russian deal alone was worth $300 million. Weapons shipments, laundered through a maze of shell corporations. If it collapsed, rival syndicates would smell blood in the water. His empire would fracture. People would die, not just his people but the orphanages he secretly funded, the families who depended on his protection money, the vulnerable trapped in this world with nowhere else to turn. Odin Chaz, the Russian spat. 1 hour. Find someone who speaks properly or deal is finished. And Kang? My colleagues in Moscow are very disappointed. Disappointment has consequences. The line went dead. Tae-joon turned to face his deputy Ji-won Park, who stood by the mahogany desk with her arms crossed. Beautiful, brilliant, and ambitious, everything he'd valued when he promoted her. But tonight her smile didn't reach her eyes. Still no replacement translator? She asked, voice honey smooth with an edge of something darker underneath. The agencies have no one available with Russian, Mandarin, and Japanese fluency on this short notice, Tae-joon said, running a hand through his black hair. Not at this hour. Not for this type of work. Ji-won's smile widened slightly. Perhaps this deal wasn't meant to be. Perhaps it's time to consider new leadership approaches. Before Tae-joon could respond, lightning struck again, closer this time, and the lights flickered. He had 1 hour to save everything he'd built. He had no idea that salvation was already on its way, in the form of a soaking wet delivery girl carrying fried chicken and destiny. Hey, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from right now? And if you stumbled into a Mafia boss's crisis like this, what would you do? Run for the exit or step up and change everything? I'm genuinely curious. Your answer might surprise you when you see what happens next. The rain was brutal. Soo-ah Kim's delivery bike skidded slightly as she pulled up to the towering glass and steel monument to wealth on Gangnam's most exclusive street. 53 minutes until this order was officially late. She'd promised herself no more late deliveries this month. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Not when grandma's medication cost 850,000 Korean wons every month. Not when their studio apartment's rent was 3 months behind. Not when her little brother needed school supplies she'd been putting off for weeks. She grabbed the insulated bag, fried chicken, tteokbokki, and some expensive imported beer, and ran through the downpour toward the entrance. The lobby alone probably cost more than her entire neighborhood. Marble floors. Crystal chandeliers. A security desk where 2 men in suits watched her drip water across their pristine floor with barely concealed disgust. Delivery for Suite 6000, she said in Korean, trying to sound confident despite looking like a drowned rat. The guards exchanged glances. One made a call. After a tense minute, he nodded toward the private elevator. 60th floor. Don't touch anything. Soo-ah bowed slightly. Respect cost nothing, her grandmother always said, and stepped into an elevator lined with mirrors. She caught her reflection. 26 years old, exhausted eyes, cheap rain jacket plastered to her thin frame, hair escaping from her helmet in wet tangles. She looked exactly like what she was. Someone the world had decided didn't matter. The world had no idea what was hidden behind those exhausted eyes. Soo-ah Kim had an eidetic memory, the kind that remembered every word, every sound, every pattern she encountered. As a child, she taught herself English from library books, memorizing entire dictionaries. In high school, while other kids had social lives, she downloaded language apps and worked through Mandarin, Japanese, Russian, Spanish. Not because she had grand plans. She just could. Languages made sense to her the way music made sense to Mozart. They filled the lonely hours. Now she was fluent in 6 languages. And she delivered fried chicken. The elevator opened directly into a private foyer. Voices, angry voices, echoed from behind massive double doors slightly ajar. She approached carefully, planning to knock when she heard it. Russian. Tai slushish? Yatib Gavoryu, Yesli Tai ni Predostavish, Garantiai Sekas, Moi Ludi V Vladivostokas Poluchalai Prikaz. Are you listening? I'm telling you, if you don't provide guarantees now, my people in Vladivostok have already received orders. Her hand froze before knocking. The voice on the speaker was cold, precise. She understood every word. Vladivostok. Guarantees. Orders that sounded military. Dangerous. A man's voice responded in broken Russian, clearly struggling. Yeah, Yapaname. No. Wrong grammar. Wrong tone. He just accidentally called the other man an insult in Russian, a mistake of verb conjugation that changed I understand to I understand you're a fool. The speaker erupted. CHTO? Tai smash. Soo-ah's mind raced. She caught fragments. Orphanage, protection money, families, vulnerable people who'd be caught in crossfire if this deal collapsed. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. When you see someone drowning and you can swim, you don't walk away. She didn't let herself think. Thinking would mean fear. Fear would mean paralysis. Soo-ah knocked hard, then pushed the doors open. The room fell silent. A man stood with his back to her, tall, powerful shoulders, expensive suit, phone pressed to his ear. Several others turned to stare. A beautiful woman in designer clothes, 2 men who had enforcer written in every scar and hard line of their faces, a younger guy behind a laptop who looked terrified. Who the hell? The enforcer started. Soo-ah spoke in rapid, perfect Russian directly to the phone. Господин Potsoluista, Proshu Proshchenia Zie Pririvani. Yaparavachik. Potsoluista, Pozvoltiamini Pomik, Ispravit, Nidorazumani. Sir, please forgive the interruption. I'm a translator. Please allow me to help correct the misunderstanding. The man with the phone, Tae-joon she would learn, spun around. His eyes were dark, sharp, calculating. Dangerous. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the Russian voice barked through the speaker. Dorito? Novi Paravachik. Who is this? New translator? Tae-joon made a split-second decision. He tilted the phone toward her. Soo-ah's delivery bag slipped from her shoulder to the floor. She stepped forward, water still dripping from her clothes, and began to speak. She explained in flawless Russian that there had been a tragic miscommunication due to a translation error, that Kang Tae-joon deeply respected the arrangement and was prepared to offer additional guarantees as a gesture of good faith. She used formal address, understood the subtle dance of face-saving that transcended cultures, adjusted her tone to match the Russian's regional dialect. Vladivostok, she confirmed, with its particular maritime flavor. The Russian's anger cooled by degrees. She answered his questions about shipment schedules, payment structures, security protocols, translating Tae-joon's responses while subtly smoothing the rough edges, adding culturally appropriate phrases that built bridges instead of burning them. 15 minutes later, the Russian grudgingly agreed to proceed. The call ended. The silence in the room was deafening. Tae-joon stared at her like she'd materialized from another dimension. Who are you? Soo-ah Kim. I delivered your fried chicken. She pointed at the forgotten bag. That'll be 48,000 Korean wons. The deputy, Ji-won Park, she'd introduce herself later with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, laughed. It was not a kind sound. But Tae-joon kept staring. You speak Russian. And Korean, English, Mandarin, Japanese, and Spanish, Soo-ah said. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the dawning realization of what she'd just walked into. The men with scars. The tense atmosphere. The talk of shipments and guarantees. Look, I heard someone struggling and I wanted to help. I should go. Wait. Tae-joon's voice cut through the room like a blade. I have a major international negotiation in 4 days. Japanese and Chinese partners. Life or death stakes. I need a translator. I'll pay you 10 million Korean wons for 4 days of work. Soo-ah's brain stuttered. 10 million won. Nearly 3 months of deliveries. Grandma's medication for a year. Her brother's school fees. Their rent. Food. I'm not qualified for. You just saved a $300 million deal in 15 minutes, Tae-joon said flatly. You're qualified. 4 days. I need an answer now. She should run. Every instinct screamed danger. But she thought of her grandmother's latest hospital bill, marked urgent in red ink. She thought of her brother eating instant noodles for the third night in a row because it was all they could afford. I need to be home every night, Soo-ah said. I take care of my grandmother. Non-negotiable. Tae-joon's expression didn't change. Done. You start tomorrow 8 a.m. Leave your bike with security, we'll have a car pick you up. The chicken, Soo-ah said weakly. You still need to pay. The young guy at the laptop, he looked kind at least, jumped up and shoved a 50,000 won note into her hand. Keep the change. As she walked back to the elevator in a daze, she heard Ji-won Park's voice, sugar-sweet and poisonous. Are you sure about this, sir? She's a delivery girl. The elevator doors closed before she heard Tae-joon's response. In the lobby, Soo-ah stood dripping on marble that cost more than her life and wondered if she'd just made the best decision of her life or signed her own death warrant. She had no idea it was both. The car that picked up Soo-ah the next morning was a black Mercedes with windows tinted so dark they looked like portals to the void. The driver didn't speak. She spent the ride frantically Googling Crimson Lotus on her phone and immediately regretted it. Organized crime. International smuggling. Underground casinos. Money laundering. 3 rival syndicates. 2 police investigations that mysteriously closed. One very dangerous man at the center of it all, Kang Tae-joon. She'd literally delivered fried chicken to a mafia boss. The 60th floor looked different in daylight, less menacing, more corporate. Glass walls. Modern art. A receptionist who took her information with cool professionalism. But the men in suits stationed at every corner wore their violence like cologne. You couldn't see it but you could sense it. Tae-joon's office was minimalist and massive. Black desk, leather chairs, technology everywhere. The man himself sat reviewing documents, looking every bit the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, if that CEO had grown up fighting for survival and never forgotten how. Miss Kim. Sit. She sat. The negotiation is Friday. 3 parties, our organization, the Yamamoto Group from Tokyo, and the Chin family from Shanghai. We're finalizing territory agreements for tech components smuggling through Incheon and Busan ports. You'll translate all discussions. Anything you hear stays in this room. Understood. Mr. Kang, I need to be clear. I can't participate in planning illegal activities. I'll translate, but... You'll translate, he interrupted. What I do with that information is not your concern. Your concern is accuracy and discretion. Can you do that? She swallowed hard. Yes. Good. You'll spend the weekend learning relevant technical vocabulary and background on both parties. Min-ho, he gestured to the young man from last night, now hovering in the doorway, will assist you. Min-ho Lee looked about Soo-ah's age, with gentle eyes behind designer glasses and a nervous energy that seemed out of place in this world of calculated menace. As Tae-joon dismissed them, Min-ho practically bounced over. That was insane last night, he whispered as they walked to a conference room. You just walked in here like, I've been working here 8 months and I'm still terrified every day. I'm Min-ho, by the way. Tech and data analysis. Also the guy who does not want to be here but student loans are a monster, you know? Soo-ah found herself smiling despite everything. Soo-ah. Also here for money I desperately need while trying not to think about what here means. We're going to be friends, Min-ho decided. Survival buddies. I'll teach you the ropes, like don't ever use the bathroom on the 58th floor, that's where they take people for private conversations, and always be polite to the kitchen staff because they know everything and can be powerful allies. Over the weekend, Min-ho proved invaluable. He provided files on the Yamamoto Group, old-school Yakuza, honor-bound, respect hierarchy above all, and the Chun family, new money, aggressive, care only about profit margins. He helped her memorize technical terms. Semiconductor specifications, shipping container classifications, port authority codes. They worked late into Saturday night in the conference room. Around 11 p.m., Soo-ah went to find coffee. The executive floor was mostly empty. But as she passed a half-open door, she heard voices, Tae-joon and 2 men she recognized as enforcers. 3 kilos of product went missing from the Busan warehouse. Find out who took it and make an example. I don't care if he has a family, I don't care if... Soo-ah's hand trembled, sloshing coffee over the rim of her cup. 3 kilos. Product. Example. The euphemisms barely disguised the violence underneath. She hurried back to the conference room, where Min-ho took one look at her face and poured soju into her coffee without asking. You heard something, he said quietly. I can't do this. People are going to get hurt because of... People are already getting hurt, Minho said, uncharacteristically serious. This world exists whether we're in it or not. The question is whether you take the money that keeps your grandmother alive and your brother in school, or you walk away on principle and watch them suffer for your clean conscience. He paused. I hate that I've become the kind of person who says that out loud. But it's true. Soo-ah stared into her spiked coffee. When did you become so cynical? About 3 months after I started here. Right after I paid off my student loans and moved my mother out of a rooftop apartment with no heating. Minho's smile was sad. We all make compromises. The trick is knowing where your line is. Friday arrived too fast. The negotiation took place in a private dining room at Seoul's most exclusive hotel, the kind where world leaders held secret summits. The Yamamoto representatives arrived first, 3 men in impeccable suits, led by an older gentleman with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. The Chen family sent 2 younger men, aggressive and impatient, flanked by their own translator, who, Soo-ah noted, kept checking his phone like he'd rather be anywhere else. Tae-joon sat at the head of the table, Ji-won Park at his right hand. Soo-ah stood slightly behind him, heart hammering. The opening pleasantries were in Japanese. Soo-ah translated Tae-joon's formal greeting, making sure to use the respectful language forms that the Yakuza valued. She could feel the older Japanese man, Yamamoto-san himself, assessing her. Then the Chin representative spoke in Mandarin, cutting through the formality. Let's discuss real business. Territory splits. Revenue percentages. We're not here to drink tea. Soo-ah translated, but softened the bluntness slightly for Yamamoto-san, who valued proper form. She was beginning to understand her real job, not just conveying words, but navigating the cultural chasms between 3 very different criminal philosophies. The negotiation lasted 4 hours. The Chin family wanted larger profit shares. The Yamamoto group insisted on maintaining honor codes that the Chinese found antiquated. Tae-joon played mediator, but the conversation kept threatening to derail. At one point, the younger Chinese representative made a comment in Mandarin that was deeply insulting to Japanese honor, calling them old men playing samurai dress-up. Soo-ah made a split-second decision. She translated it as, the younger generation sometimes questions traditional approaches, then quickly added in Japanese to Yamamoto-san, though of course, we recognize that wisdom and honor are not matters of generation but of character. Yamamoto-san's eyes flickered to her. The barest nod. Crisis averted. She performed similar linguistic tightrope walks a dozen more times, reading the room, understanding what needed to be said versus what was actually said, building bridges with careful word choices. She invoked Jong, the Korean concept of deep emotional connection, when tensions rose, reminding all parties of their long-standing relationships. She showed proper respect to the Japanese while accommodating Chinese directness while projecting Tae-joon's authority. By the time they shook hands on the deal, Soo-ah was exhausted down to her bones. But they'd succeeded. In the car afterward, Tae-joon was silent for a long time. Then, you didn't just translate. You mediated. You understood the psychology. Languages aren't just words, Soo-ah said. They're entire ways of thinking. If you only translate words, you miss everything that matters. I'm offering you a full-time position. 25 million Korean wons per month. Full medical benefits for you and your family. Housing allowance. You become my official international communications director. Soo-ah's mind reeled. 25 million won monthly. Her grandmother could have the surgery she needed. Her brother could attend university. They could leave their crumbling studio apartment. I have conditions, she heard herself say. I translate and facilitate communication. I don't participate in operational planning. I don't carry weapons. I don't go to locations where active crimes are taking place. And I want Fridays off. My brother has piano recitals. Tae-joon actually smiled, not a big smile, barely a curve of his lips, but it transformed his face. You just negotiated with the Yakuza and a Shanghai crime family, and you're worried about your brother's piano recitals? Priorities, Soo-ah said. Done. You start Monday. Over the next 6 weeks, Soo-ah became indispensable. She facilitated deals with Russian arms dealers, former KGB, nostalgic for Soviet glory, responded to literary references. She smooth-talked Japanese casino partners, old-school honor, needed elaborate gift-giving rituals. She negotiated with Chinese tech smugglers, new money, wanted to be treated like corporate executives, not criminals. Her paycheck cleared. She paid off their apartment rent. Took her grandmother to a private hospital. Enrolled her brother in a better school. Moved them to a proper apartment with heat and a second bedroom. But she also noticed things that troubled her. Late-night meetings she wasn't invited to. Shipments discussed in code. Scarred men coming and going at odd hours. The way certain conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Minho confirmed her suspicions over coffee one morning. You know what this place really is, right? It's not just business suits and boardrooms. Last month he stopped himself. Just be careful. Especially around G1. She's been asking questions about you. Not friendly questions. Soo-ah had noticed G1's increasing coldness. The deputy had gone from fake smiles to barely concealed hostility. She'd caught G1 watching her during meetings, eyes calculating something unpleasant. But Soo-ah was too focused on the work to worry much. Until late one Thursday night, 2 months into her job, when she stayed late to prep for a Friday morning call with Moscow contacts. The building was mostly empty. She was reviewing notes when she heard voices from Tae-joon's office. His door was cracked open. Curiosity got the better of her. Tae-joon's voice, the shipment arrives Tuesday. Full payment on delivery. If the police get wind of it, they won't, G1's voice, smooth and confident. I've already handled the port inspectors. The containers will be marked as agricultural equipment. And the other matter? The warehouse manager who was skimming. Pause. Handled. His body won't be found. Soo-ah's blood turned to ice. She backed away silently, grabbed her things and left. In the elevator her hands shook. His body won't be found. The words echoed. She'd known abstractly what this world was. But hearing it stated so casually. That night she barely slept. Friday morning during breakfast, Tae-joon asked her to stay after the Moscow call. They sat in his office as dawn light painted Seoul gold outside the windows. You've exceeded every expectation, he said. You're not just an employee. You've become essential. I wanted you to know. I don't trust easily. But I trust you. Something in his voice made her look up. His expression was unguarded in a way she'd never seen, vulnerable, almost. He told her about growing up in the orphanage, about being beaten by older kids, about stealing food to survive, about building this empire from nothing because he'd promised himself he'd never be powerless again. Everyone I've ever trusted has either betrayed me or died, Tae-joon said quietly. You're the first person in years who feels different. Soo-ah's heart did something complicated. This man, dangerous, powerful, responsible for terrible things, was also damaged and human and looking at her like she mattered. I'm just doing my job, she managed. No, he said. You're doing far more than that. The moment stretched between them, fragile and charged. Then his phone rang, shattering it, and she fled to her own office, pulse racing, feeling like she'd just stepped onto a tightrope without a net. She had no idea the tightrope was about to break. Ji-won Park's jealousy had curdled into something poisonous. She'd worked for Kang Tae-joon for 4 years. Climbed from analyst to deputy through ruthless competence and careful political maneuvering. She'd imagined herself eventually taking over, becoming the first woman to run a major Korean syndicate. She'd earned that position with blood and brilliance. Then a delivery girl with a talent for languages swooped in and captured Tae-joon's trust in 8 weeks. It was insulting. Infuriating. Unacceptable. Ji-won had tried subtle sabotage first, undermining Soo-ah in meetings, questioning her translations, spreading rumors among the staff. But Tae-joon only seemed to value the girl more. He'd started asking Soo-ah for advice on matters beyond translation, treating her like a trusted advisor. The morning Ji-won heard Tae-joon tell Soo-ah, "You're the first person in years who feels different," something inside her snapped. She waited until 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night. The building was dead silent, only night security, easily avoided by someone who knew every camera blind spot. Ji-won had made copies of Soo-ah's access cards weeks ago, just in case. Planning ahead was her specialty. She slipped into Soo-ah's office, plugged a custom USB drive into the computer. Minho wasn't the only one with tech skills, and began the digital frame-up. She accessed the encrypted financial files that only top executives could reach. Found the Russian deal files, the sensitive shipping manifests, the offshore account details. Then she created a trail, emails from Soo-ah's account to a Russian competitor's anonymous address, file transfers with timestamps, and the final flourish, a bank transfer of 50 million Korean wons from a shell account to an account in Soo-ah's grandmother's name. Ji-won had set up that shell account 6 months ago under a fake identity, planning to use it eventually. Now it would serve as the smoking gun. She also planted carefully edited recordings. Soo-ah's voice, spliced from meeting recordings, seeming to discuss selling information. Not perfect but combined with the financial evidence, damning enough. The only witness was Hyun-sik Choi, the night security guard on the 60th floor. He'd rounded a corner and frozen when he saw Ji-won exiting Soo-ah's office at 2:47 a.m. Their eyes met. "You saw nothing," Ji-won said, voice cold as a blade. Hyun-sik was 53 with a daughter in university and a wife with diabetes. He'd worked security for the Crimson Lotus for 12 years, kept his head down, never asked questions. He knew what happened to people who crossed Ji-won Park. "I saw nothing," he agreed, throat dry. But Hyun-sik was also a man who'd raised his daughter to believe in justice. And he had access to the security feeds. Before Ji-won could think to erase them, he copied the footage of her entering and leaving Soo-ah's office onto a personal drive he kept hidden in his locker. He didn't know yet what he'd do with it. But his conscience demanded he preserve the evidence. Wednesday morning, chaos erupted. The Russian competitor began moving on territories that should have been secret. Deals collapsed. Partners called, furious about leaked information. By noon, Tae-joon had summoned his digital forensics team, not Min-ho, but harder men who specialized in finding traitors. They traced the leak to Soo-ah's computer. Thursday morning, Soo-ah was summoned to the 60th floor conference room. She arrived expecting another translation assignment. Instead, she walked into an ambush. Tae-joon sat at the head of the table, face carved from ice. Ji-won stood beside him, expression professionally concerned but eyes gleaming with triumph. Two enforcers blocked the door. Min-ho sat in the corner looking stricken. The digital forensics chief, a granite-faced man named Dong-wook, had a laptop open, display turned toward her. "Sit down," Tae-joon said. His voice was arctic. Soo-ah sat confused. "What's going on?" "When I hired you I took a risk," Tae-joon said, each word precise and cutting. "I trusted you with sensitive information. I brought you into my inner circle. I believed you were different." "I don't understand." "Don't?" The word cracked like a gunshot. "Don't insult me with confusion. We have evidence. Your computer was used to access encrypted files. Emails from your account to Russian competitors. File transfers. And this," Dong-wook turned the laptop screen. "A bank transfer of 50 million won to your grandmother's account. Payment for betrayal." Soo-ah's world tilted. "That's impossible. I would never." "The evidence is clear," Ji-won said, voice dripping false regret. "I'm so sorry, Soo-ah. I wanted to believe in you. But facts don't lie. These are lies. Someone planted this." Soo-ah stood desperate. "Check the timestamps. I wasn't even in the building when some of these files were accessed." "Min-ho, you monitor building access, tell them." Min-ho looked like he wanted to die. "The access logs show your keycard was used," he said miserably. "I'm sorry, Soo-ah. I checked 3 times. Because someone copied my keycard." Soo-ah turned to Tae-joon, pleading. "You know me. You said you trusted me. I wouldn't betray you, I wouldn't betray anyone. Please just investigate deeper, check the security cameras." "We did," Dong-wook said flatly. "Nothing conclusive. But combined with the digital evidence and the money trail, there's no doubt." Tae-joon stood slowly. The betrayal in his eyes was worse than anger, it was cold, complete dismissal. "I made you. Pulled you from delivering chicken to making millions. Gave you everything. And you sold me out for what? Slightly more money? Was our deal not generous enough?" "I didn't." Tears were streaming down Soo-ah's face now. "Please, I'm being framed. You have to believe." "I believed once. I won't make that mistake again." Tae-joon nodded to the enforcers. "Get her out. She has 1 hour to clear her desk. If she attempts to access any company property or contacts any of our partners, she'll be charged with corporate espionage. Are we clear?" "Tae-joon, please." "Mr. Kang," he corrected, voice like stone. "You lost the right to familiarity when you betrayed my trust. You're lucky I'm letting you leave alive. Don't test my generosity." The enforcers grabbed her arms. Soo-ah struggled, still pleading, as they dragged her from the conference room. Staff in the hallways turned away, unwilling to meet her eyes. Min-ho followed at a distance, openly crying, but didn't intervene. They let her pack her personal items, a coffee mug, her brother's drawing, the language textbooks she'd brought, while an enforcer watched. The humiliation burned worse than any physical pain. As she was escorted to the elevator, she passed Ji-won in the hallway. The deputy's smile was small and victorious. "Such a shame," Ji-won said sweetly. "You had so much potential." Soo-ah saw it then, the cold calculation in Ji-won's eyes, the barely suppressed glee. "You did this," Soo-ah whispered. "You framed me." "Prove it," Ji-won said, smile widening. "Oh wait, you can't. Because all the evidence points to you. Sometimes the world isn't fair, delivery girl. Sometimes the people who know how to play the game win. The enforcer shoved Soo-ah into the elevator. The last thing she saw was Ji-won's satisfied face as the doors closed. Soo-ah made it to the lobby before she started shaking. Made it outside into the rain. It was raining again, Seoul's sky weeping, before she collapsed against a wall, sobbing. She'd lost everything. The job, the money, the trust, the fragile hope that her life was finally improving. Worse, she'd lost her reputation. Word would spread fast in this interconnected criminal world. No one would hire her now. She was marked as a traitor. The rain soaked through her clothes as she walked home in a daze. Her apartment, the nice one she'd just moved into with heat and space, would be gone soon. They'd burned through savings in weeks. Her grandmother's next hospital visit was in 4 days and cost 2 million Korean wons they no longer had. At home, her grandmother took one look at Soo-ah's face and pulled her close without questions. That night, lying in the dark, Soo-ah remembered another betrayal. She was 14. Her father had worked for a small import-export company, legitimate business, nothing like the Crimson Lotus. But someone had framed him for embezzlement, planted evidence so perfect that he'd gone to prison. He died there 3 years later, broken and disgraced. Soo-ah had been powerless then. A child, unable to help, watching her father's conviction destroy their family. She wasn't powerless anymore. Somewhere around 3 a.m., grief transformed into cold fury. Ji-won Park had made a mistake. She'd underestimated the delivery girl. She'd assumed Soo-ah would just fold, accept defeat, disappear quietly. She'd assumed wrong. Soo-ah sat up, mind racing. If Ji-won had framed her, there had to be evidence. Digital trails could be faked, but perfection was impossible. Every crime left traces. She just had to find them. She thought of Min-ho. He'd looked devastated during the meeting. He might help even if it was risky. She thought of the security feeds. Someone must have seen something. She thought of Ji-won's overconfidence. Arrogance led to mistakes. As dawn broke over Seoul, painting her room in soft gold light, Soo-ah made a decision. She would fight back. She would prove her innocence. And she would make Ji-won Park pay for every moment of this nightmare. Soo-ah had 800,000 Korean wons in savings, about 2 weeks of her old salary, a lifetime at her current zero income. She used 50,000 Korean wons to buy a burner phone and a cheap laptop from a used electronics market in Yongsan. If she was going to investigate, she couldn't use anything traceable. Her first call was to Min-ho. He answered on the 5th ring, voice wary. Soo-ah? You shouldn't be calling me if they trace. Burner phone. Min-ho, I didn't do it. You know I didn't. A long silence. Then, I want to believe you. But the evidence was planted. Think about it. You're the tech expert. Could someone fake that evidence? Another pause. She could hear him thinking, always too honest for this world. Theoretically? Yes. Your access cards could be cloned. Emails could be sent from a spoofed account. The bank transfer. He trailed off. The bank transfer is harder to fake, but not impossible if someone had access to shell accounts. Ji-won has access to shell accounts, doesn't she? How did you? Min-ho caught himself. I can't help you. If they found out I was even talking to you, they'd assume I was involved. I'd lose everything. I'm sorry, Soo-ah. I really am. He hung up. Soo-ah sat in a cheap coffee shop, staring at her laptop. She couldn't blame Min-ho. He had his mother to support, his own survival to worry about. She was alone. Except, security. There were cameras everywhere in that building. If Ji-won had accessed her office, there'd be footage. Hyun-sik Choi. The night guard who'd always been kind to her, who'd asked about her grandmother, who had a daughter he was putting through university. She remembered him mentioning once that his daughter wanted to be a lawyer, fight for justice. Worth a shot. She found him 2 days later at a soju bar near the building. She'd remembered him mentioning it was his favorite spot after late shifts. He was sitting alone, nursing a drink, looking troubled. Mr. Choi? He looked up, startled. Fear flickered across his face. Miss Kim. You shouldn't be here. If they see us together. I know. I'm sorry. But I need help. She slid into the booth across from him. I didn't betray them. Someone framed me. And I think you know who. Hyun-sik's hands tightened around his glass. He didn't meet her eyes. You saw something, didn't you? Soo-ah pressed. The night it happened. You saw someone in my office. I can't, he whispered. I have a family. My daughter. She's in her 3rd year at Yonsei University, pre-law. If I cross Ji-won Park, if she finds out I have evidence. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. You seem like a good person. But I can't risk my family. Soo-ah's heart sank. But she understood. She'd been making the same calculations for months, compromising her values to protect her grandmother and brother. Who was she to judge? She stood to leave. Then stopped. Your daughter wants to be a lawyer, right? Fight for justice. Hyun-sik nodded miserably. What will you tell her about justice? About standing up when it's hard. Soo-ah's voice was gentle, not accusing. I'm not trying to guilt you, Mr. Choi. I understand being afraid. I'm terrified. But I'm going to fight this anyway because, what else can I do? Except being destroyed for someone else's ambition? Let lies win? She left 50,000 Korean wons on the table, money she couldn't afford to lose, and walked out into the night. She made it half a block before she heard running footsteps behind her. Miss Kim. Wait. Hyun-sik caught up, breathing hard. His face was set with determination that looked like it cost him everything. I saved the security footage, he said. From that night. I copied it before anyone could erase it. Ji-won Park entering and leaving your office at 2:47 a.m. I don't know if it's enough, but... He pulled a USB drive from his pocket. My daughter asks me sometimes about my work. I always tell her I'm just a security guard, nothing important. Maybe this once I can tell her I did something that mattered. Soo-ah's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Thank you so much. There's more, Hyun-sik said. I've been watching the access logs since you were fired. I still have system access. They never revoked my clearance. Ji-won's been entering your old office at odd hours. Whatever she planted, she might be monitoring to make sure it stays hidden. If you're planning to expose her, you need to act fast. He gave her his personal number, a risk in itself, and melted back into the night. Back in her apartment, Soo-ah plugged the USB drive into her laptop with shaking hands. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Timestamp 2:47 a.m., Ji-won Park using a keycard to enter Soo-ah's office, staying for 18 minutes, leaving with a satisfied expression. It wasn't proof of what Ji-won had done inside the office, but it proved she'd been there when she shouldn't have been. Combined with other evidence, if Soo-ah could find it, it could be enough to raise serious doubts. Her burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. Don't hang up, Minho's voice said quickly. I'm using a secure line. I've been thinking about what you said. You're right, the evidence was too perfect. Too clean. I've been doing some digging. Quiet digging. In places even Tae-joon can't monitor. Minho. Let me finish before I lose courage. I traced the email that supposedly came from your account. It bounced through 5 proxies, but the originating IP address? It's from Ji-won's home network. She got sloppy. She assumed we'd stop at your level of evidence. Soo-ah's heart hammered. Can you prove it? I can pull the server logs. They're heavily encrypted, but I built some of those systems. I know the back doors. It'll take me a day, maybe 2. But Soo-ah? If I do this and we're wrong, or if she finds out before we expose her, I'm dead. Literally dead. Are you sure about this? She framed me. Destroyed my life. And she's getting away with it. I'm sure. Okay. Minho exhaled slowly. Okay. I'm in. Because you're right, justice should matter more than fear. My mother didn't raise me to be a coward. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is the easy part. Proving it to Tae-joon? Getting him to listen? That's going to be much harder. He trusted you and feels betrayed. That kind of betrayal doesn't make people rational. They made a plan. Minho would gather digital evidence. Server logs, metadata, anything that proved Ji-won had fabricated the case against Soo-ah. Soo-ah would analyze the security footage and look for additional corroboration. They'd compile everything into an undeniable case, then, somehow, get Tae-joon to listen. Over the next 30 hours, Soo-ah barely slept. She watched the security footage frame by frame, noting every detail. She researched the bank transfer, tracing the shell account Ji-won had used, buried in corporate records she accessed through a legitimate legal database, 200,000 Korean won she couldn't afford but paid anyway. The account had been created 6 months before Soo-ah was even hired. Premeditation. Minho delivered encrypted files at 3 a.m. on Saturday. Server logs showing the fake emails originated from Ji-won's IP address. Metadata proving the evidence files had been accessed from Ji-won's administrator account. Even a recording, audio pulled from a backup system, of Ji-won instructing Dong-wook, the forensics chief, to make sure the Kim investigation stays conclusive. Dong-wook had been in on it. Or at least, complicit. This is enough, Minho said over the encrypted call. This proves everything. But how do we get it to Tae-joon? Ji-won controls access to him now. She's been promoted to acting deputy director. She won't let us near him. Soo-ah thought of the conference room. The same room where she'd been humiliated and expelled. Monday morning. There's a major meeting with the Tokyo partners. I remember it from the schedule. All executives will be there, including Tae-joon, Ji-won, and the enforcers. Public setting. They can't just disappear me if witnesses are present. You're going to walk right back into the tower? Do you have a better idea? Minho was quiet. Then, I'll make sure building security doesn't stop you. I have access to the visitor management system. But Soo-ah? If this goes wrong, if the evidence isn't enough or if Tae-joon doesn't believe us, we're both finished. I know, Soo-ah said. I'm tired of being afraid. Let's end this. Sunday night, she barely slept again. She rehearsed what she'd say, how she'd present the evidence, anticipated every objection Ji-won might raise. Her grandmother, who still didn't know the full story, squeezed her hand before bed. You have your father's eyes, Grandma said softly. He never stopped fighting for truth even when it cost him everything. I'm proud of you. Whatever happens tomorrow. Monday morning arrived with clear skies. No rain, no storm, just crisp autumn sunshine that felt like a good omen. Soo-ah dressed in her best clothes, professional, confident, the opposite of the broken woman who'd been dragged from this building 2 weeks ago. She took a deep breath, checked the USB drive with all evidence one more time and headed to the tower. To face her accuser. To reclaim her life. Or to lose everything trying. The security guard at the lobby desk didn't recognize her at first, or pretended not to. Then his computer screen flickered and he glanced up, confused but waving her through. Minho's work. The private elevator rose like a countdown. 60th floor. The doors opened. The reception area was busy, assistants moving with purpose, preparing for the Tokyo meeting. A few people glanced at Soo-ah, did double takes, whispered. She ignored them, walking straight toward the conference room with her head high and her heart trying to hammer out of her chest. The conference room doors were closed. She could hear voices inside, Japanese, being translated badly by someone who clearly wasn't as skilled as Soo-ah had been. They'd notice. She pushed open the doors without knocking. The room fell silent. Tae-joon sat at the head of the table, flanked by the Yamamoto representatives she remembered. Ji-won was mid-sentence, stumbling through a Japanese phrase. Dongwook was there. Several enforcers. Minho in the corner, laptop open, looking pale but determined. All eyes turned to Soo-ah. Ji-won recovered first, her face morphing from shock to cold fury to professional concern in rapid succession. What is she doing here? Security. Wait, Tae-joon said, standing. His expression was unreadable, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise? Oh, anger? How did you get past security? I came to deliver something, Soo-ah said, voice steady despite her terror. Not food this time. The truth. We already know the truth, Ji-won snapped. You're a traitor and a thief. You're trespassing. Tae-joon, call security. I have evidence, Soo-ah interrupted, pulling out the USB drive. Evidence that proves I was framed. Evidence that proves the real traitor is standing right here in this room. The Yamamoto representatives were watching with fascination. This was better than any negotiation. Tae-joon's eyes narrowed. I saw the evidence against you. It was conclusive. It was fabricated. By someone with access to your systems, your accounts, and a motive to eliminate me. Soo-ah turned to face Ji-won directly. By Deputy Director Ji-won Park. Ji-won laughed, a brittle, sharp sound. This is desperate even for you. You have no proof. You're just a disgraced delivery girl making wild accusations. Minho, Soo-ah said. Please connect to the main display. Minho, hands shaking slightly, plugged Soo-ah's USB drive into his laptop and projected it onto the conference room screen. The first image appeared, security footage timestamp 2:47 a.m., showing Ji-won Park entering Soo-ah's office with a copied keycard. This footage, Soo-ah narrated, shows Deputy Director Park entering my office 18 minutes after I left the building that night. She had no legitimate reason to be there. But she stayed for 18 minutes. Doing what? I was checking on files, Ji-won stammered. I had authorization. You didn't sign in, Hyun-sik's voice came from the doorway. The security guard stood there looking terrified but resolute. Access logs require signature for after-hours executive office entry. You didn't sign in. I checked. Next, Soo-ah continued as Minho changed the display. We have server logs showing that the email supposedly sent from my account, the email selling secrets to Russian competitors, originated from Deputy Director Park's home IP address. She routed them through proxies, but every digital trail has a source. The screen filled with technical data. The Yamamoto representatives couldn't read it, but Tae-joon could. His eyes scanned the information, expression darkening. That's falsified, Ji-won said, but her voice was losing confidence. He could have doctored those logs. Then explain this. Soo-ah nodded and Min-ho played an audio file. Ji-won's voice, crystal clear from the backup security system. Dong-wook, make sure the Kim investigation stays conclusive. I don't care what you have to bury or fabricate. She needs to be gone. Dong-wook, the forensics chief, went white. Finally, Soo-ah said, pulling out printed documents, the shell account used to transfer the 50 million won to my grandmother's account? It was created 6 months before I was even hired. The account holder's digital fingerprint matches Deputy Director Park's personal encryption key, an identifier unique to each executive that Min-ho can verify in your security protocols. She laid the documents on the table in front of Tae-joon. Her hands were steady now. Rage made a person steady. She framed me because she saw me as a threat. Because you trusted me. Because I was an inconvenience to whatever plans she had for taking over this organization. Tae-joon looked at the documents. Looked at the screen. Looked at Ji-won with an expression that made grown men step back. Explain, he said quietly. Quiet was more dangerous than shouting. Ji-won's composure cracked completely. She was nobody. A delivery girl. And you gave her everything. Trust, money, access, influence, things I earned over years. She didn't belong here. She was soft, sentimental, a liability. I was protecting the organization. By betraying it? Tae-joon's voice could have cut glass. By creating fake evidence? By leaking real information to our enemies while framing someone innocent. I didn't leak anything real. I only, Ji-won stopped, realizing her admission. You only framed an innocent person. Only destroyed someone's reputation and career. Only proved yourself to be exactly the kind of traitor you accused her of being. Tae-joon stood and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Min-ho, verify this evidence. Every piece. I want confirmation within the hour. I already verified it, sir, Min-ho said quietly. It's authentic. All of it. I staked my career on it. Tae-joon turned to the enforcers. Take Deputy Director Park to the secure room on 58. We'll discuss her future after this meeting. Tae-joon, please. Ji-won's mask shattered completely, revealing desperation. I did this for you. For us. She was going to ruin everything we built. I built this empire, Tae-joon said coldly. Not we. And I decide who belongs here. You decided you knew better. That was your first mistake. He nodded to the enforcers. Take her. Now. Ji-won screamed as they dragged her toward the door, still protesting, still trying to justify herself. The sound echoed down the hallway and faded. The conference room was silent except for breathing. Tae-joon looked at Soo-ah for a long moment. His expression was complicated. Shame, relief, regret, something else harder to name. I was wrong, he said finally. I should have investigated more thoroughly. Should have trusted my instincts about you instead of reacting from anger. I let pride and hurt feelings override my judgment. That failure is mine. So I wanted to yell at him. Wanted to rage about the 2 weeks of hell she'd endured, the fear, the humiliation, the financial devastation. But she saw something in his eyes, genuine remorse, the kind that couldn't be faked, and some of her anger softened. You hurt me, she said simply. Badly. I know. I'm sorry. He paused. I want you back. Full reinstatement. Full back pay for the time you lost. Promotion to Executive Director of International Relations, executive level, equal to what Ji-won had. Complete reform of our hiring and oversight practices so this never happens again. And he hesitated. My personal apology. For whatever it's worth. Soo-ah looked around the room. The Yamamoto representatives were watching with interest. This drama was certainly memorable. Min-ho was nodding encouragingly. Hyun-sik still stood by the door, looking like he couldn't believe he'd survived. She thought about walking away. Leaving this dangerous world, finding something safer and cleaner. But she thought about the money that had saved her grandmother's life. The power she'd had to actually change things. The feeling of being essential, valued, more than just a delivery girl society ignored. And she thought about the reforms she could push for. The transparency. The accountability. The chance to shape this organization into something less monstrous. I want more than an apology, Soo-ah said. I want structural changes. I want hiring programs for overlooked talent. People like me who society dismisses. I want scholarships funded for kids from orphanages and poor neighborhoods. I want an internal ethics committee that can question decisions without fear of retaliation. I want this place to be better. Tae-joon's lips quirked slightly. Anything else? Yes. I want Fridays off. So. For my brother's piano recitals. Done. All of it. Tae-joon extended his hand. Welcome back, Executive Director Kim. Soo-ah shook his hand. The room erupted in, not quite applause but a release of tension. Minho was grinning like an idiot. Hyunsik looked like he might cry from relief. Yamamoto-san spoke in Japanese and Soo-ah automatically translated. He says that display of honor and justice restoration makes him confident in continuing our partnership. He respects an organization that corrects its mistakes, even publicly. Tae-joon inclined his head to the Japanese representatives. Tell him we appreciate his understanding and his patience with our internal matter. Soo-ah translated, adding the proper honorifics and face-saving language that turned internal matter into temporary disruptions swiftly resolved with integrity. As the meeting continued, negotiations back on track with Soo-ah translating flawlessly, like she'd never left, she felt the weight lifting. Not completely. Trust would take time to rebuild. And this world was still dark, still dangerous, still morally complicated. But she'd fought back and won. She'd proven her innocence. She'd exposed corruption. And she'd survived. For now that was enough. 4 months passed. Soo-ah stood in her new office, 3 times the size of her old one, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. Her title was printed on the door in both Korean and English, Executive Director of International Relations. Below her name a small plaque read, Integrity First. It had been her addition. Tae-joon had approved it without comment, but she'd caught him looking at it once with an expression that might have been shame or respect or both. The changes she demanded were slowly taking root. The scholarship program had launched last month, 10 full university scholarships for orphans and kids from low-income families, no strings attached. The ethics committee met weekly with real power to investigate complaints. Hiring practices had been overhauled to focus on talent over connections, bringing in people from overlooked backgrounds. Minho had been promoted to Chief Technology Officer, with a salary that let him move his mother to a beachside apartment in Busan where she'd always dreamed of living. Hyunsik was now head of security, with a team he'd handpicked for integrity. His daughter had sent Soo-ah a thank you card that made her cry. My father told me what you did. Thank you for showing him that courage matters. I'm going to be the kind of lawyer who fights for people like you. The organization was still criminal. Soo-ah had no illusions about that. But it was less monstrous than before. Fewer innocent people caught in crossfire. Better working conditions for lower-level employees. Rules about civilian safety that were actually enforced. Small victories, but they mattered. Her family was thriving. Her grandmother had gotten the surgery she needed, successful with full recovery. Her brother had been accepted into a prestigious music academy, his talent finally recognized and nurtured. They lived in a spacious apartment in a good neighborhood, where her grandmother had a garden and her brother had a room for his piano. The financial security alone would have been life-changing. But there was something else too. Tae-joon. Their relationship had evolved in ways Soo-ah hadn't anticipated. After her reinstatement, they'd been formally professional, executive director and CEO, proper boundaries, no hint of the vulnerability he'd shown before her firing. But over weeks and months something shifted. Late nights reviewing negotiation strategies turned into conversations about philosophy, family, dreams. He told her more about his childhood, the orphanage brutality, the first time he'd had to hurt someone to survive, the cold calculation that had built his empire but hollowed out parts of his humanity. She told him about her father's wrongful imprisonment, the weight of being the family provider at 18, the loneliness of being brilliant in a world that saw only a delivery girl. They understood each other's darkness and resilience in ways few people could. 3 weeks ago, after successfully negotiating a truce between rival factions that could have turned into bloodshed, they'd shared a drink in his office. Just the two of them, Seoul spread beneath them like a galaxy of lights. You've changed this place, Tae-joon had said quietly. Not just the policies. The atmosphere. People are less afraid. More human. People work better when they're not terrified, Soo-ah replied. I never learned that. He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. I grew up believing fear was the only reliable tool. You've shown me there are other ways. Better ways. You're learning, she'd said softly. That takes courage too. He'd reached across the desk and she'd let him take her hand. Nothing more than that, just hands clasped in acknowledgement of something neither was ready to name. But the connection was there. Growing. Complicated by power dynamics and moral ambiguity and the fundamental question of whether a mafia boss and a woman who believed in justice could ever truly bridge their worlds. Soo-ah didn't have answers. She just knew that when Tae-joon looked at her, she felt seen. Valued not for what she could do for him but for who she was. And when she looked at him, she saw not just the dangerous man who controlled a criminal empire, but the orphan boy who'd built armor so thick he'd forgotten how to take it off. They were both damaged. Both trying to be better than their circumstances demanded. Maybe that was enough to build something on. Or maybe she was rationalizing attraction to a man whose world she should have run from. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Minho poked his head in, grinning. Board meeting in 10. You ready for the quarterly review? Tae-joon wants to showcase the international expansion successes. Ready as I'll ever be. Soo-ah grabbed her tablet with presentation notes. How's the new hire orientation going? Brilliantly. We've got 3 kids from the scholarship program interning this summer, smart as hell, working twice as hard as the nepotism hires we used to get. One of them caught an accounting error that would have cost us millions. Another one speaks Arabic and Farsi fluently, which is opening up entire new markets. See? Talent exists everywhere. We just have to look. As they walked to the boardroom, Soo-ah reflected on how surreal her life had become. 6 months ago, she'd been delivering fried chicken in the rain. Now she was an executive in one of Asia's most powerful criminal syndicates, implementing humanitarian reforms, negotiating million-dollar deals and maybe, possibly, falling for the complicated, damaged man at the center of it all. Life was strange. The boardroom was full, senior executives, regional directors, financial officers. Tae-joon sat at the head of the table, and when Soo-ah entered, his expression softened almost imperceptibly. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Something passed between them. Recognition. Promise. The slow-burn simmer of connection that hadn't yet ignited but was getting warmer. Executive Director Kim, Tae-joon said formally. Please present the International Relations Quarterly Review. Soo-ah stepped to the front of the room and began her presentation. Success metrics, new partnerships, cultural integration strategies. She was confident, articulate, commanding the room's attention. She belonged here, had earned this position through talent and courage and refusing to give up when everything seemed lost. As she spoke, she caught her reflection in the window. Not a delivery girl anymore. Not just a translator. She was Soo-ah Kim, executive director, power player, someone who mattered. And if the path that brought her here was morally complicated, if the man she was falling for lived in shadows, if every day required ethical compromises she never imagined making, well, nobody's story was simple. Hers was just more dramatic than most. The presentation concluded to approving nods. Tae-joon's eyes held pride and something warmer. As the room emptied, he lingered. Dinner tonight? He asked, casual but with an undertone of meaning. There's a new restaurant in Itaewon. Private room. We could discuss future strategies. Strategies? Soo-ah repeated, lips quirking. Strategies, he confirmed, the faintest smile playing at his mouth. All right. 7 o'clock. 7. As Soo-ah left the boardroom, she allowed herself a small smile. Her life was dangerous, complicated, built on foundations that would make ethicists weep. But it was hers. She'd fought for it, defended it, shaped it into something better than it had been. And maybe, just maybe, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. For now, she'd embrace that. Deal with moral complications as they came. Keep pushing for reforms, keep protecting the vulnerable, keep being the voice that reminded this dark world that humanity mattered. And tonight, she'd have dinner with a man who saw her as an equal and a partner, and see where that dangerous spark between them might lead. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in her life, Soo-ah Kim wasn't afraid of uncertainty. She'd learned to deliver more than food. She'd learned to deliver justice, change, and her own authentic power. And that was worth everything. 3 weeks after that dinner, which had been professional right up until the moment Tae-joon walked her to her car and hesitated, then brushed his hand against her cheek with devastating gentleness before pulling away, Soo-ah faced her biggest test yet. The Singapore expansion. The Crimson Lotus was negotiating to establish operations in Singapore, partnering with local syndicates and international players from 3 continents. It was a massive undertaking. Tech smuggling routes through Southeast Asia, financial networks connecting Hong Kong to Dubai, casino partnerships that required navigating regulations in 5 countries. It was also the perfect opportunity to prove her reforms worked. I want the negotiation team built from our new hiring pool, Soo-ah told Tae-joon in his office one evening. Rain drummed against the windows, Seoul's eternal rain. The scholarship interns, the overlooked talent we've brought in. Give them real responsibility. Tae-joon frowned. This deal is worth billions. If it fails because we're testing your theory about merit-based hiring, it won't fail. These people are brilliant. They just need someone to believe in them. She leaned forward. You built an empire from nothing because someone, maybe just yourself, believed you were more than an orphan society had dismissed. Give them the same chance. He studied her for a long moment. The sexual tension that had been simmering between them since that almost touch 3 weeks ago was palpable, but Soo-ah kept her focus professional. Mostly. Fine, Tae-joon said. But you're leading it. This is your project. Success or failure rests on you. Deal. Soo-ah assembled her team. Ji-hoon, a scholarship kid who taught himself financial modeling from YouTube videos and spoke Malay fluently. Soo-min, a former delivery driver like Soo-ah who had an uncanny gift for reading people and understanding cultural nuance. Raj, a Pakistani refugee who spoke 4 languages and understood Middle Eastern business culture better than anyone Soo-ah had met. And Young-hee, a quiet woman from Busan who'd been working in the mailroom but had a master's degree in international law she'd earned while working full-time. You're all here because you're exceptional, Soo-ah told them in their first meeting. Society might have overlooked you. I didn't. This organization didn't. You're going to help negotiate a multi-billion-dollar deal, and you're going to prove that talent exists everywhere. They were terrified. They were also determined. For 2 weeks they prepared obsessively. Ji-hoon modeled financial scenarios. Young-hee navigated Singapore's legal framework. Raj cultivated connections with Dubai partners. Soo-min developed cultural strategy briefs for each negotiating party. Min-ho provided tech support, creating secure communication channels and data visualization tools. Hyun-sik's security team coordinated protection details. Even Tae-joon got involved, offering strategic advice but letting Soo-ah's team take the lead. The negotiation itself took place in Singapore over 5 intense days. The first session nearly collapsed when the Dubai representatives took offense at a protocol misstep by the local Singapore partners. Raj intervened, speaking to the Dubai contingent in perfect Arabic, invoking cultural concepts of hospitality and mutual respect that smoothed the tension. Soo-ah watched in admiration as he navigated the same delicate dance she'd performed so many times, bridging cultural chasms with language and empathy. The second day, financial projections came under scrutiny. Ji-hoon presented his models with quiet confidence, answering technical questions from senior executives who had decades of experience. His analysis was flawless. One Singapore banker told Soo-ah afterward, "Where did you find this kid? He's sharper than our own financial team." By day 3 the pieces were falling into place. Young-hee negotiated legal frameworks that protected all parties. Soo-min read the room during tense moments, suggesting breaks or smoothing over personality conflicts before they escalated. Soo-ah translated when needed, but mostly she coordinated, letting her team shine. On the final day they signed agreements worth $3.8 billion. The celebration afterward was subdued. This was still a criminal organization after all, not a corporate success story, but Tae-joon pulled Soo-ah aside. "You were right," he said simply. "About everything. Those kids, your team, they were brilliant. Better than the old guard would have been. Not kids. Talented professionals who deserved a chance." Soo-ah couldn't keep the satisfaction from her voice. "This is what's possible when we look beyond the surface. I'm learning that." Tae-joon's gaze was intense. "From you. You're changing not just the organization. You're changing me." The moment stretched between them, charged and dangerous. Then his phone buzzed with an urgent message, shattering the mood. Back in Seoul, Soo-ah implemented the reward she'd promised. Ji-hoon was promoted to financial analyst with a salary that let him move his family out of a basement apartment. Young-hee became associate legal counsel. Raj was made regional director for Middle East operations. Soo-min joined Soo-ah's executive team as cultural strategy officer. Min-ho got a massive bonus and used it to fund a scholarship in his own name at his old university. Hyun-sik's daughter graduated law school and immediately got job offers from top firms. He framed her diploma next to a photo of the security footage he'd saved, the evidence that had sparked Soo-ah's vindication. He told his daughter that courage had its own rewards. The reforms were working. The organization was more efficient, more stable, less reliant on fear and brutality. People whispered that Executive Director Kim was making the Crimson Lotus almost respectable. As respectable as a criminal syndicate could be, anyway. But in the shadows, old enemies were watching. And preparing to strike back. The Russian rival, Viktor Sokolov, the same man whose call Soo-ah had intercepted that stormy night, hadn't forgotten the deals he'd lost. For months he'd been planning revenge. The first sign came on a Tuesday morning. Minho burst into Soo-ah's office, laptop in hand, face pale. "We've been hacked. Deep hack. Someone got through our security protocols and accessed encrypted communications. They have details on our Singapore operations, upcoming deals, financial structures, everything." Soo-ah's stomach dropped. How? Sophisticated. Military-grade software. This wasn't some amateur. This was a state-level or near-state-level attack. Minho pulled up data logs. And there's more. They left a message in the system. In Russian. The message was simple and chilling. Предательница стала властью. Skoro ona stanет trupom. The traitor became powerful. Soon she will become a corpse. Soo-ah's blood ran cold. They were targeting her specifically. An emergency meeting convened within the hour. Tae-joon, Soo-ah, Minho, Hyun-sik, and senior security personnel gathered in the secure conference room. "Viktor Sokolov," Tae-joon said grimly, confirming what Soo-ah suspected. "He's been consolidating power in Vladivostok. This is his move: destroy our Singapore operation before it fully launches, eliminate key personnel, destabilize our organization." "Why target Soo-ah specifically?" Hyun-sik asked. "Because she's the one who stopped him originally," Minho said. "And she's the architect of our new approach. Take her out, and the reforms collapse, the new talent loses its champion, the organization reverts to the old brutal ways. It's strategic." Tae-joon's expression was thunderous. He wants to send a message: modernization is weakness. Fear is strength. Anyone who challenges the old ways gets eliminated. "So what do we do?" Soo-ah asked. She was terrified, but her voice stayed steady. "We can't just wait for them to attack. We go on offense," Tae-joon said. "Find Sokolov's vulnerabilities. Hit him before he hits us." Over the next week they worked around the clock. Minho and his tech team traced the hack's origin, identifying Sokolov's digital infrastructure. Hyun-sik coordinated with international security contacts to monitor threats. Soo-ah analyzed Sokolov's communication patterns, looking for weaknesses. Then she found something interesting. "His lieutenant," Soo-ah said during a late-night strategy session. "Dmitry Volkov. He's been embezzling from Sokolov's operations. I found evidence in the communications we intercepted, coded references to personal accounts, discrepancies in shipment manifests." Minho's eyes lit up. "If we expose Volkov's betrayal to Sokolov, they turn on each other," Tae-joon finished. "The organization fractures from within." It was dangerous. It required perfect timing. But it might work. Soo-ah spent 3 days crafting the perfect message, in flawless Russian, using Volkov's own communication style, with evidence that couldn't be dismissed as fake. She made it look like a rival had sent it, but ensured it reached Sokolov's inner circle. The explosion was spectacular. Sokolov's organization imploded within 48 hours. Volkov was found dead in his apartment, apparent suicide, though everyone knew better. 2 other lieutenants disappeared. Sokolov himself went underground, his power base shattered. The immediate threat was neutralized. But the final move came a week later, during a negotiation with Japanese partners in Tokyo. Soo-ah was there with a small team, finalizing casino agreements, when she noticed something wrong. One of the Japanese contingent, a new face she hadn't seen before, kept watching her with an intensity that triggered alarm bells. During a break, she pulled Minho aside. "That man. Third from the left. He doesn't fit. His Japanese is too formal, like it's not his first language. And his body language." Minho checked his tablet discreetly, running facial recognition. His face went white. "That's Alexei Petrov. Sokolov's personal enforcer. He's wanted for 12 assassinations across 3 countries." They had minutes, maybe seconds. Soo-ah made a decision. She stood calmly, walked to Tae-joon, and whispered urgently in Korean. He reacted instantly, signaling to Hyun-sik's security team. The room erupted into controlled chaos. Petrov reached for a weapon. Security tackled him before he could draw it. A second attacker, hidden among the Japanese team, tried to rush Soo-ah. Hyun-sik intercepted, years of military training evident in his efficient takedown. Gunshots, muffled by silencers, shattered a window. But Soo-ah was already being rushed to safety by Tae-joon himself, his body shielding hers as they moved to a secure room. When the chaos cleared, both attackers were subdued. No casualties on Soo-ah's side. Hyunsik's security preparations had been thorough. The Japanese partners, shaken but impressed by the rapid response, agreed to reschedule negotiations. In the secure room, Tae-joon still had his arms around Soo-ah. Neither moved for a long moment. "You saved us," he said quietly. "Recognized the threat when no one else did." "Team effort," Soo-ah managed, though she was shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "Minho's tech, Hyunsik's security, your quick response. Your observation. Your instincts." Tae-joon pulled back slightly to look at her. "You're extraordinary, Soo-ah. Do you know that? I was a delivery girl 6 months ago. You were always extraordinary. The world just needed to catch up." The moment hung between them, heavy with everything unspoken. Then Tae-joon's phone buzzed. Reality intruded. They pulled apart, professional masks sliding back into place, but something had shifted. Back in Seoul, debriefing revealed the full scope of Sokolov's plan. The assassination attempt in Tokyo had been his last desperate move. With his organization in ruins and his primary assassin captured, he'd fled to Moscow, where local authorities were now investigating him for unrelated crimes. The threat was over. For now. But the experience had clarified something. The criminal world was fundamentally unstable. Violence was always one negotiation away. Safety was an illusion. Soo-ah sat in her office late that night, soul glittering below, and wondered what she was doing with her life. She'd won battles, vindication, reform, success, even survival against assassination attempts. But was this sustainable? Could she keep navigating this dark world without losing herself? A knock. Tae-joon stood in her doorway, holding 2 glasses and a bottle of expensive whiskey. "Thought you might need this," he said. "Read my mind." She waved him in. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking, decompressing from the week's chaos. Finally Tae-joon spoke. "I've been thinking about what you said once. About making this place better. About redemption being possible even in dark spaces." He stared into his glass. "I don't know if someone like me gets redemption. But with you here, I want to try. Want to believe change is possible." "Change is always possible," Soo-ah said softly. "It's just hard. And slow. And requires courage every single day. I don't have courage. I have power. There's a difference. You had courage tonight. You used your body to shield mine during the attack. You trusted my instincts without question. That's courage." Their eyes met. The tension that had been building for months finally reached its breaking point. "Soo-ah," Tae-joon said, and her name on his lips was a question, a prayer, a surrender. "Yes," she whispered, answering all 3. He kissed her then, gentle at first, then deeper, months of restraint and connection and complicated emotions pouring into that moment. Soo-ah kissed him back, acknowledging the truth she'd been avoiding. She'd fallen for this dangerous, damaged man who was trying to be better. For her. Because of her. It was reckless. It was complicated. It was real. And for tonight that was enough. Morning came too soon and too bright. Soo-ah woke in Tae-joon's penthouse. Not the office, his actual home, a space few people ever saw. Minimalist, elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows showing Seoul waking up in soft gold light. Tae-joon was already awake, standing by the window with coffee, watching the city. He looked different in this light. Softer, more human, less the terrifying mafia boss and more just a man trying to figure out his life. "Regrets?" he asked without turning. "Not yet," Soo-ah said, joining him. "Ask me again in a week." He smiled, a real smile, rare and devastating. Fair. They talked for hours. About what this meant. About whether they could navigate a relationship built on such unequal power dynamics and complicated ethics. About whether love, if that's what this was, could survive in the criminal underworld's harsh light. "I don't have answers," Soo-ah admitted. "I just know that when I'm with you I feel seen. Valued for who I am, not what I can do. And I know that you're trying to be better. That matters." "I don't know if I can be what you deserve," Tae-joon said honestly. "This world I've built, it's dark. Violent. I've done things I can't take back, hurt people I can't save. You're light in justice and compassion, and I'm someone who funded orphanages. Someone who agreed to reforms that reduced his own power. Someone who's learning empathy." She touched his face. "You're not just your worst moments. Neither am I. We're both works in progress." They decided to try. Carefully. Honestly. With full awareness of the complications and a commitment to reassess as needed. The organization stabilized over the following weeks. The Singapore expansion launched successfully. New partnerships flourished. The scholarship program expanded to 20 students. The ethics committee actually forced changes to some questionable operations, proving its power was real. Soo-ah's team, the talented people she championed, continued to excel, promoting a culture shift throughout the organization. The Crimson Lotus was still criminal, still dangerous, but it was evolving. Slowly. Imperfectly. But genuinely. Then the message arrived. 2 months after the Tokyo incident, an encrypted email hit Tae-joon's secure server. Minho traced it to a VPN in Moscow, but the signature was unmistakable. Viktor Sokolov. The message was in Russian. Soo-ah translated, her blood chilling as she read. Kang Tae-joon. You think you have won. You think your reforms and your woman translator have made you safe. But empires built on fear do not fall so easily. I am patient. I am resourceful. And I am coming for everything you love. Starting with her. This is not over. This will never be over. Until one of us is dead, the war continues. Privet from Moscow. The final line, greetings from Moscow. Casual. Terrifying. Tae-joon's expression turned to stone. He's declaring permanent war. Let him, Soo-ah said, surprising herself with her own calm. We've survived him before. We'll survive him again. He'll keep trying. Keep attacking. You'll never be safe. I was never safe, Soo-ah interrupted. I wasn't safe delivering food in the rain for poverty wages. I wasn't safe when my father was framed and died in prison. I wasn't safe when Ji-won Park destroyed my reputation. Safety is an illusion, Tae-joon. The question isn't whether there's danger. The question is whether the fight is worth it. And is it? Worth fighting? She looked around at the organization they were building. Flawed, yes. Still criminal, yes. But better than it had been. Offering opportunity to people society dismissed. Reducing harm where possible. Evolving towards something that balanced survival with compassion. She looked at the man beside her, damaged, powerful, trying to learn empathy from a delivery girl who refused to accept her place in the world's hierarchy. She thought about her grandmother's surgery, her brother's music school, the scholarship students who now had futures, Minho's mother in her beachside apartment, Hyun-sik's daughter graduating law school. All the small victories that mattered more than any grand moral absolutism. Yes, Soo-ah said firmly. It's worth fighting. Not because the fight is clean or easy or morally simple, but because doing nothing means accepting the world as it is. And I don't accept that. I never have. Tae-joon pulled her close. Then we fight together. Not as boss and employee. As partners. Equals. Partners, Soo-ah agreed. Equals. With Fridays off for my brother's piano recitals. He laughed, a real laugh, unguarded and warm. Always the negotiator. They stood together looking out at Seoul's endless sprawl. Somewhere in the city new threats were forming. Somewhere Viktor Sokolov was planning his next move. Somewhere the world's darkness was creeping closer. But also somewhere scholarship students were studying for better futures. Orphans were getting opportunities they'd never imagined. Overlooked talent was finally being recognized. Small lights fighting against vast darkness. When I came here to deliver food, Soo-ah said quietly, I was nobody. The world had decided I didn't matter. And I believed it. I'd internalized that message so deeply that I couldn't imagine anything different. You were always somebody, Tae-joon said. The world was just blind. Maybe. But I learned something through all of this. The framing, the fighting back, the reforms, even falling for you. I learned that we decide who we are. Not society. Not circumstances. Not even the darkness we navigate. We decide. And who are you? Soo-ah smiled. I'm the woman who came to deliver food and ended up delivering justice. I'm the voice that refused to be silenced. I'm the talent that refused to stay hidden. I'm complicated and imperfect and figuring it out as I go. But I'm not nobody. I never was. No, Tae-joon agreed. You never were. They kissed and Seoul sparkled below them, indifferent to their drama but somehow beautiful in its indifference. The city held millions of stories, millions of people fighting for meaning and dignity and survival. Theirs was just one tale in that vast tapestry. But it was their tale. And they'd write it themselves together, one complicated choice at a time. The road ahead was uncertain, dangerous, morally complex. But they'd face it side by side, the Mafia boss learning compassion and the delivery girl who'd become his voice, his conscience, his equal, his partner. Not a fairy tale. Not simple. But real. And worth fighting for. And that, Soo-ah thought as Tae-joon's arms tightened around her and Seoul's morning light painted everything gold, was more than enough. This story isn't just about one woman's dramatic journey from poverty to power. It's about something deeper, something that lives in all of us. It's about the hidden potential that society overlooks. The delivery driver who speaks 6 languages. The security guard with a moral compass. The mailroom worker with a master's degree. The scholarship kids who just need someone to believe in them. Talent exists everywhere, but opportunity is gate-kept by those who can't imagine brilliance wearing a cheap uniform or arriving on a beat-up scooter. It's about refusing to accept the world's verdict on your worth. Soo-ah Kim could have stayed invisible, delivering food, accepting her place, never challenging the hierarchy that dismissed her. Instead, she trusted her own abilities enough to walk into that penthouse office and change everything. That courage, to believe you matter when everyone says you don't, that's revolutionary. It's about fighting back when you're framed, silenced, or destroyed. When Ji-won Park fabricated evidence and everyone believed it, Soo-ah could have given up. Instead, she investigated, gathered proof, and demanded justice. That persistence, refusing to let lies win, that's power. It's about incremental change in imperfect systems. The Crimson Lotus didn't become a charity, but it became less monstrous. Scholarships, ethics committees reduced harm, small victories in dark spaces. Sometimes you can't burn down the system, so you work within it, pushing it toward something better, one reform at a time. That's pragmatic idealism, and it matters. It's about complicated relationships and moral nuance. Soo-ah fell for a man who'd done terrible things but was trying to evolve. That's not simple. It's not a fairy tale. But it's human. Real growth is messy, and real people contain multitudes, both darkness and light, both cruelty and compassion, both past mistakes and future potential. It's about the choices that define us. Not the circumstances we're born into. Not the systems that constrain us. But the moment-by-moment decisions we make about who we'll be, what we'll fight for, what lines we won't cross. Soo-ah chose courage over safety, justice over revenge, partnership over isolation. Those choices built her real power. Your story might not involve mafia bosses and international intrigue, but it involves the same fundamental questions. Will you let the world define your worth, or will you define it yourself? Will you stay silent when you're wronged, or will you fight back? Will you hoard the opportunity you've gained, or will you extend it to others? Will you accept systems as they are, or will you work to make them better? These are the questions that matter. And your answers, the ones you live out every day in small decisions and difficult moments, those answers write your story. So here's my challenge to you: wherever you are right now, find your hidden talent and refuse to keep it hidden. Stand up when you're dismissed or wronged, investigate, gather evidence, demand justice. Look around at your systems, workplace, community, relationships, and ask what you can make better, even incrementally. Recognize talent in overlooked places and give those people opportunities. Be willing to evolve, to learn compassion, to try being better than your worst moments. Your empire might be smaller than the Crimson Lotus, but it's yours. Build it with integrity. Defend it with courage. Share it with generosity. That's how one delivery girl changed a criminal syndicate. And that's how you'll change your corner of the world. Drop a comment below with your story. Have you ever been underestimated because of how you looked or where you came from? Have you ever had to fight back against false accusations? Have you ever found unexpected courage in a crisis moment? Share your experience. Let's build a community of people who refuse to accept the world's verdict on their worth. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that they matter. Subscribe for more edge-of-your-seat thrillers that explore the complicated, dramatic intersections of power, justice, talent, and human connection. Remember, you're not just a delivery person or an entry-level employee or whatever label society slapped on you. You're someone with hidden potential waiting for the right moment to break free. That moment might be today. It might be tomorrow. But when it comes, trust yourself enough to step through that door and change everything. Thank you for being here. Wishing you health, courage, and the strength to write your own story. See you in the next one.